Okay, I know I say this every time, but if this is your first time watching this, then you haven't heard it yet. Go back to part 1, everything will make more sense. The day is over. The number of students in the classroom is dwindling and the school is darkening moment by moment. The sun will go down any minute. When the red sunset dips below the horizon and night falls, there won't be anyone left in the school.
始めるわよ、あーちゃん。まずは結界の下調べ。どんな結界かを調べてから消すか残すか決めましょう。
Let's get started, Archer. First, we'll survey the boundary field. Once we know what sort of field it is, we can decide whether to keep it or erase it. I call out to my unseen companion. I guess that he agrees. I get back the sense of a nod. Boundary field indicates something that protects a practitioner. You can think of it as a locational magecraft that stretches a rope woven from magical energy along the ground and applies some change to the area inside of it. The inside of the boundary field can have an infinite variety of effects. From making the inside of the field invisible to the human eye, to restricting the kind of magic that can be performed within the field. Among those, the most offensive use is to suppress the life force of anything inside the field. The field applied to the school is one of those. It's not complete yet, but if that field is knit together even for a moment, everyone in the school will probably completely lose consciousness. But that thing doesn't have any effect on me. After all, the boundary field isn't set up against me personally, it's set up in the place that I'm in. That kind of indirect magical intervention has no effect on mages who can pass magical energy through their bodies. That kind of weak electric current wafting in the air just gets pushed away as soon as it gets close to the strong current that is me. Therefore, there must be another intent behind this boundary field. This boundary field. I don't know what sort of person set up the boundary field here, but his objective isn't to defeat masters with it. It's hard to believe, but he's targeting everybody in the school. There's only one reason to do something like that. I don't want to think about it, but we thoroughly search the school, and finally we end up on the roof. Outside, it's descended into complete darkness. It's 8 o'clock past the gate. Past the gate closed at 6. The gate closed at 6. Anyway, the only people left at the school are me and Archer in his spirit form next to me.
これで7つ目か。とりあえずここが起点みたいね。
And that's 7. Anyway, this seems to be the origin. There's an 8-stroke seal drawn brazenly on the roof. The maroon letters carved on the roof can only be seen by mages, and their form is one I've never seen nor heard of before.
参ったな。これ私の手には負えない。
This is beyond me. The guy who set this boundary field up isn't taking any precautions. He's He's not thinking about anything, but the technique binding this field together is unbelievably advanced. I can erase the magical energy from this curse for the time being, but I can't destroy the field itself. If the caster passes magical energy through the field again, it would probably recover from that alone. Archer doesn't say anything. The reason he hasn't said anything since he saw the seal on the roof is probably because he realized its true nature as well. This boundary field isn't on the level of just stealing someone's energy. If it's activated, it will literally dissolve the people inside of it. There are boundary fields that steal the spiritual or physical energy of the people inside them. But the field that's currently placed over the school is something else. This is soul eating. Nothing else but a fortress of blood that melts the bodies of the people inside it and forcibly collects the outflowing souls. Normally, souls are difficult to work with. We take for granted that they exist, and they're said to be an essential component of magecraft, but as few as one mage has ever actually understood the soul. A soul is simply something to be investigated, or something to be transferred into a vessel. That's where our understanding stops. So not just to suck them out, but to collect them in one place is something incomprehensible. I mean, even if you could collect that kind of unconvertible energy, there's no way for a mage to use it. Which means, if there is a point to it, that is... Archer, is that what you guys are? Unconsciously, I ask him in a cold voice.
ご推察の通りだ。我々は基本的に霊体だと言っただろう。故に、食事は第二、ないし第三要素となる。
As you suspect. I said that we're fundamentally spirits, correct? Therefore, our food is the second soul, or third mind components.
君たちが肉を栄養とするように、サーバントは精神と魂を栄養とする。
Just as you take sustenance from meat, servants take sustenance from the soul and the mind.
栄養を取ったところで基本的な能力は変わらないが、取り入れれば取り入れるほどタフになる。つまり魔力の貯蔵量が上がっていくというわけだ。
By taking nourishment, our fundamental abilities don't change, but the more we take in, the stronger we become. In other words, our magical energy capacity increases. I see. The way to make your own servants stronger is to attack people indiscriminately.
マスターから提供される魔力だけじゃ足りないってこと？
The magical energy supplied by the master isn't enough.
足りなくはないが、大いに越したことはない。実力が劣る場合、弱点を武士で補うのが戦争だろう。
It's not that it isn't enough, rather that you can never have too much. In the case that your own strength is insufficient, supplementing your weak points with material is just war.
周囲の人間からエネルギーを奪うのは、マスターとしては基本的な戦略だ。そういった意味で言えば、この結界は効率がいい。
Stealing energy from people in the area is a fundamental strategy for a master. Looked at that way, this boundary field is efficient. If you want to win, then kill people and strengthen me, is what Archer is saying. So simple. I already knew that. So, I think I already know the path I should take from now on.
それ勘に触るわ。二度と口にしないで、アーチャー。
That offends me. Never say that again, Archer. I declare as I stare at the drawn seal. Archer, for some reason, in an encouraged voice.
同感だ。私も真似をするつもりはない。
I agree. I too have no intention of doing anything like that. Like that, he answers forcefully.
さて、それじゃ消そうか。無駄だろうけど、とりあえず邪魔をするぐらいにはなる。
Well then, let's erase it. It's probably pointless, but in the meantime it should at least slow them down. I get closer to the drawn seal and hold out my left arm. The magic crest inscribed on my left arm is the inherited spellbook of the Tosaka family. With a flick, I flip the switch in my consciousness. I pass magical energy through the magic crest, load the section about eliminating boundary fields, and now, in one breath, all I have to do is activate it. Abzug Bedenung Mittelstand. Erasure, removal procedure, second section. I touch the seal with my left hand, and at once I wash away the magical energy. Well, with that I just wash the color out of it for the time being.
なんだよ、消しちまうのか？もったいねえ。
What, you're gonna erase it? What a waste. Suddenly, as though to keep us from erasing the boundary field, a third voice echoes across the rooftop. Instantly standing up, I turn around. On top of the water tower. He looks down on us from 10 meters up in the air. A deep blue that melts into the night. The corners of his mouth are lifted up roughly, and a smell like a wild animal is carried to us on the wind. The beast's gaze is clear. The blue-clad man, regardless of this unusual situation, is looking at me like a friend he's had for 10 years.
これ、あなたの仕業?
This is your doing?
いや、小細工を浪するのは魔術師の役割だ。俺たちはただ命じられたまま戦うのみ。だろ？そこの兄さんよ。
Nope. Fiddling with something delicate like that is a mage's job. All we do is fight like we're told to. Isn't that right, mate? Playfully, but with a voice filled with bloodlust. This guy can see Archer?
やっぱり、サーバント。
Like I thought, a servant.
そうとも。ね、それがわかるお嬢ちゃんは、俺の敵ってことでいいのかな?
I am indeed. And can I assume that the little miss who knows that is my enemy, then? My spine freezes. The man's voice is casual, as though he's talking about nothing at all. To think that those are the coldest words I've ever heard, so frightening that they make me feel like I'm going to throw up. How should I move? Or what's my best course? How I should move? Or what my best course of action is? I have no idea. Just, my good sense is telling me that whatever I do, I mustn't fight this man here.
ほう、大したもんだ。何もわからねえようで要点は抑えてやがる。
Oh? Not bad. You look like you don't know anything, but you get the important points.
ああ、失敗したなこりゃ。 面白がって声をかけるんじゃなかったぜ。
Ah, I messed this one up. I shouldn't have called out to you for fun. The man's arm comes up. In an instant, in his arm that until now held nothing, there's now a red weapon 2 meters long. Faster than I can think about it, I leap to the side. We're on the roof, so I can't just jump isn't a thought I have the luxury of. Anyway, as hard as I can, with all my strength, I leap to the side and hurl myself against the fence. A whirlwind makes my hair dance. By a hair's breadth. Rushing forward in a flash, without mercy it slices through the fence and the air that I'd been standing in just a second before. You've got good legs, little miss. The blue whirlwind is chasing me. There's no way to run. My back is to the fence, to the left and right. No, it's no good. I'll never make it in time. Es ist groß. Es ist klein. Relative mass. Heavy pressure. My reaction is fast. I activate the magic crest on my left arm, and in one move I work some magic. Body mass shift and gravity adjustment. In an instant, my featherweight body easily takes flight. Rin. I know! Leave it to me! And I jump over the fence and fall from the roof. The wind and pressure squeeze my body. It's about 15 meters to the ground, 7 seconds until landing. It's too slow, he'll definitely catch me. Vox Gott es Atlas. Commandment citation. Burial returns to the earth. Archer, you've got the landing. I have Archer deaden the shock of the landing, and as soon as my legs touch the ground, I start running. Anyway, I have to change location. Not tight quarters like this on the roof, but somewhere where we have some more freedom to move around. We have to move to a wider space with no cover, where Archer and I can play to our strengths. I dash from the roof to the courtyard in less than 7 seconds. The distance is over 100 meters. At that speed, a normal person would only see a blur. But that... Ah, those really are good legs. It's a bit of a shame to put you down here. Couldn't possibly have any meaning against a servant. Yeah. As soon as I take a step back, Archer materializes in front of me. A cloudy night. Gripped in Archer's hand is a short sword that reflects the little bit of moonlight. Oh? The corners of the man's mouth twist ominously. Good, good. That's the spirit. I don't mind folks who cut right to the chase. Whoosh, a whirlwind. That's the weapon he was holding on the rooftop. The spear, crimson like blood, that he came to kill me with. The servant Lancer. Indeed, and your servant.
って感じじゃねえな。何者だ、てめえ。
Doesn't feel like a saber. Who are you? There's not the slightest trace of his previous playfulness. Facing the mass of bloodlust that Lancer has become, Archer says not a word. There's less than 5 meters between the two of them. The weapon Lancer is holding is close to 2 meters long. I can't help but think that to that man who gives off the smell of a beast, the remaining 3 meters has no meaning at all.
まっとうな一騎打ちをするタイプじゃねえな、てめえは。ってことは、アーチャーか。
You don't look like the type to fight a proper duel, which means you're an archer? Archer doesn't respond to his taunts either. Oddly, red and blue confront each other. The falsely similar knights of the two colors are already gauging each other's decisive attack.
いいぜ。好みじゃねえが、出会ったからにはやるだけだ。そら、獲物を出せよ、アーチャー。
Fine, it's not my preference, but since we've met, we've got to do it. Come on, bring out your bow, Archer.
これでも礼はわきまえているからな。それぐらいは待ってやる。
I know my manners that much. I'll wait for you. Archer makes no answer. As though there's no need to speak to an enemy you have to defeat. His steely, sword-like back declares. It's then that I realize. I'm an idiot. Archer's only waiting for a single word from me.
Archer?
Archer. Yeah. Without getting any closer, I speak to his back.
手助けはしないわ。あなたの力、ここで見せて。
I'm not going to help you. Show me your strength here. Was that a laugh? The corners of his mouth raise in response to my words, and the Red Knight dashes. A whirling gust. Short sword in hand, the red bullet dashes forward. Idiot. The responding blue spear thrust. If the dashing archer is a gust of wind, then the counterattacking spear point is the divine wind itself. A streaking blade, a flowing attack. Archer barely fends off the high-speed thrust of the spear with his short sword. The redcoat stops. The enemy didn't allow Archer's dash. He's only allowed to close the distance by barely 2 meters, into the reach of the spear. For a long weapon, range is always something you keep. For a Lancer with a weapon nearly 2 meters long, all he has to do is counterattack an enemy who enters his reach. It's easier to pierce an enemy stepping towards you than it is to step out for an attack yourself. And yet, Lancer closed the range himself and didn't even allow Archer to advance. Fool, a mere bowman challenging me to a close-in fight? His temper is like a raging fire. Lancer closes the distance with each attack, knowing no pause. For a long weapon, closing the distance is suicide. Stabbing the enemy while holding distance and controlling the fight is the battle of a spearman. Consequently, there's no chance of victory in Lancer's continued advance. No way. However, that's just what the book says. The throat, the shoulders, the forehead, the heart, there's no gap in the thrusts of Lancer's spear, and no space to escape. The speed of the strikes causes them to blur together. Each thrust of Lancer's spear that checks Archer, pushes him back, and causes him to retreat could itself be called certain death. However, no matter how much you say that he's just a bowman, Archer is still a servant. No ordinary attack could be certain death against him. Archer narrowly parries the spear point thrust at his forehead. Archer narrowly parries the spear point thrust at his forehead, and faster than Lancer's spear, steps inside its reach. Based on its shape, you'd think that the thrust is the main point of a spear, but the fundamental technique of the spear is in swings. That's because a wide sweep using the length of the spear doesn't allow the defensive stepping back to avoid it. A half-hearted retreat won't get you out of the reach of the spear, and if you try to counterattack by stepping through the swing, you'll only be slashed across the stomach. With that said, if you step forward carelessly, you'll be repelled by the long shaft of the spear and your ribs easily smashed. Archer and Lancer are of roughly the same build. For the unarmored archer, stepping into the range of the spear, into those whirlwind-like sweeps, is difficult. However, a thrust is a different matter. A lightning-fast thrust, certain to strike you in a vital area, is certainly frightening. But as long as the target is a point, if you see through the attack, there are plenty of ways to avoid it. Like Archer, if you strike the haft of the incoming spear by slightly altering its course, you can create an opening. He probably underestimated him as just a bowman. The advantages of a long-range weapon are freedom, range, and distance. In narrowing the field himself, Lancer's defeat is the redcoat stops. A nightmare as though time is flowing backwards. The oncoming attack is faster than the last one. Archer, trying to divert the strike and dodge out of the way, is thrown aside along with his sword. There's no opening in Lancer's recovery. No, it's not just that. The power and agility of Lancer's thrust is increasing. By now there's certain death, even for a servant. We were the ones who underestimated him. When it comes to that servant, to Lancer's spear, there's no book to play by. Who could process that breathless flurry of blows? Archer retreats as he narrowly manages to parry the blows, and as a result, a short distance opens up between them. In that opening, Lancer uses the distance for a run-up and unleashes a still more powerful attack. The Tempest-like flurry of blows is nothing more than a repetition of such attacks. But each individual attack is a godlike technique. 10 already. No, truthfully, it's many times more than that. The straightforward torrent of spear thrusts increase further in strength, continuing to fall on Archer like rain. They're not fast, they're just skillful. Lancer's spear never slows, it just comes forth like a waterfall. What can Archer do now that he's been forced on the defensive? With a short sword like that, all he can do is parry the spear. The continually retreating Archer has no means of getting closer to Lancer. An unfolding vacuum of steel. Backup. I need to support Archer somehow, but I can't make a sound. My magic doesn't have precise aim. As long as Archer can't get a bigger distance from Lancer, he'll be caught up in it too. All that would do is make things even more advantageous for Lancer. What's more, yeah. Truthfully, I'm fascinated. This is a fight between servants. This is the Holy Grail War itself, making use of the highest rank of familiar, one that mages cannot reach, the heroic spirit. Servants. Familiars with respective and individual roles, bound to obey the 7 masters. They are the highest level of familiar, called heroic spirits, summoned forth by the Holy Grail itself. However, to call them familiars is misleading. Normally, a familiar is nothing more than something that runs errands in place of a mage. Something like a cat wearing a pair of tall boots. Or a sweet little white bird. Or a black dog that doesn't listen to its master. Well, something like that. A mere mage can only employ things of that level. After all, a familiar is just a familiar. It's just a mascot that does chores instead of its master, so for it to be stronger than its master, the mage, is impossible. But servants are different. They're literally the strongest existences in all of humanity. It would be impossible even for the only 5 magicians who are said to exist to control them, I bet. That's not because the summoning is difficult, or even because the abilities of servants are beyond those of mages. Servants are already, themselves, a thing that exists above magecraft. Let's speak frankly. Servants are the heroes of the past themselves. Myth, legend, fable, history. Real or not, the superhumans who have participated and become entrenched in legend are called heroes. The heroes who achieve permanence among humans, after death, are removed from the category of humans and ascend to become something else. People who perform miracles, who save others, or who perform great works while they're alive or after they're dead, they're worshipped as heroes. Then, they who are worshipped ascend to become spirits called heroic spirits after death, and become guardians of the human world. It doesn't matter if they were a real person or if they only ever existed in legend. What creates a hero is people's conception. The heart that thinks, "I wish it were like this," gives them form and worships them as a real thing. Truth or fiction doesn't matter to that. If there's familiarity and devotion to them as legends, that's enough for them to be realized. The ultimate ideals of humanity, the most excellent of all humans. Those are heroes, and heroic spirits. And naturally, they who are greater than humans cannot possibly be controlled by humans. Normally, mages borrow some measure of their power and use it to imitate them. That's it. Summoning and using the heroic spirit itself, something like that is completely impossible. But the Holy Grail made that impossibility possible. A thing beyond the ability of humans, completely summoning the heroic spirit itself and anchoring it as a familiar in service to a master. That nonsense is just more proof of the infinite capacity of the Holy Grail. Like that, heroic spirits are summoned without regard to age, the closest being 100 years ago, the furthest back from the Age of Gods. The 7 heroic spirits are each summoned to one of 7 masters, defend their own, and exterminate the enemy masters. Heroes from every age and every land are reborn in the present and kill each other in a contest for supremacy. That is the reason this ritual is called the Holy Grail War. Although, it seems there were limits even to the Holy Grail. Holy Grail or no, indiscriminately calling forth something like the soul was something it couldn't do. In the same way that the realization of the sixth great element, called the Devil, required a form invented by humans, heroic spirits require a form capable of acting in our world. That's their assumed name, the form allowed to them by this world. The Grail provides vessels, or classes, in which the heroic spirits can easily take form, and allows only heroic spirits appropriate to those vessels to be summoned. Like a passport to the present, the Holy Grail prepares a role as a familiar in advance. The summoned heroic spirit possesses that role, and the Grail helps them to achieve a temporary materialization. Just as there are 7 masters, there are 7 heroic spirits bound to serve them. The classes of proportion to apportioned to them in advance are also 7. The Knight of the Sword, Saber. The Knight of the Spear, Lancer. The Knight of the Bow, Archer. The Cavalryman, Rider. The Mage, Caster. The Killer, Assassin. The Mad Warrior, the Berserker. Only heroic spirits that match the attributes of these 7 classes are summoned to the present, become servants, and are bound to serve the masters. That's the servant system. Summoning and contracting of heroic spirits beyond the capacity of humans, bestowed in order to claim the Holy Grail, a miracle beyond their means. Only possible here, on this ground, is the strongest contest, the one and only Holy Grail War. An especially intense clash. The short sword that parried Lancer's spear, like that is thrown from Archer's hand. It's Lancer's technique. The straight-line thrust reversed into a sweep to Archer's wrist. For Archer, this was an attack he couldn't avoid even though he saw it coming. There is no effective way to parry a spear with a sword. If you throw it aside strongly, you'll be cut with a return swing before you can recover, but if your parry is weak, then you won't create any opening at all. A fight between a sword and a spear can be summed up in how you close with your opponent, and defeat him by fighting inside his preferred range. Halfway. There's no hesitation in the mocking Lancer. His legs that were stepping in to pursue Archer stop. I guess he means to decide this fight in an instant. Lancer solidly plants himself to the ground, and Archer, made weaponless, returns his gaze. An instant. Lancer's spear, loosed in the space of a breath, was just a glint. It wasn't even visible. Forehead, neck, and heart. 3 thrusts, all of them deadly. But the flash that couldn't even be seen is thrown back by a pair of lights. A sword is gripped in Archer's hand again. Just like before, a Chinese-style sword that calls to mind a machete. However, the greatest difference is...
二等使いか。
2 swords? The swords are a pair. Held in both his hands, left and right, are symmetrical paired swords.
旧兵風情な剣士の真似事とはな。
Huh. A bowman playing at being a swordsman. Lancer's spear rushes forward. Its speed increases as though to say that it will let Archer live no longer. The clash of weapons beating against my ears is like well-played music. The ringing of steel on steel. There's never a pause in the sparks falling from the meaning of their weapons, and the rhythm of their blows increases without limit. Their fight is like a vacuum. It swallows up the air around them. Even getting close, you're liable to be cut. In truth, it's only an instant. But to me, watching it, I can't help but feel that it goes on for so long I have trouble breathing. Lancer, trying not to let Archer into his guard. And Archer, closing the distance with his 2 swords as a shield. Their weapons clash over 100 times, and each time Archer loses a weapon. But that, too, is only for an instant. In the next instant, there's a sword in Archer's hand, and Lancer is pushed a little bit backward. Forced into this unfavorable position, Lancer recognizes his carelessness. He knows not who the enemy in front of him is. But if he underestimates him as just a bowman any further, the defeat will be his own. And I have to stop here because I'm worried that if I let it get too long, YouTube won't let me upload it. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe. See you next time.